Live.
Hello. Oh, wait a second. Why is that not working? Okay. What the heck is going on with the garage? Oh, oh, this is making me mad. Hello, everyone. It is 5:04 Pacific Time, 6:04. I do this every week. 6:04 Central Time, 7 o'clock. No, 6:04 Mountain Time, 7 o'clock Central Time, and 8 o'clock on the East Coast. It is time for Train with the Coaches. I'm Coach Jeff.
I'm Coach Sherry Ann.
Maybe I should let you do this part from now on. And this is a show where we talk about anything that's related to running, triathlon, ultra running, nutrition, any kind of training science or racing science that you want to talk about, we'll talk about on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, if you want to join in the chat room and ask questions on the show, any show that we have, please feel free to do so. We love questions. We love to answer questions. You may not always like the answer, but we love to answer the questions, especially if I answer. Before we get started with tonight's show, because we have a special guest tonight, I want to give a big shout out. We had some great stuff happen on our team last week. Of course, Monday was the Boston Marathon, and you know every runner's dream pretty much is to get to the Boston Marathon. So we're very, very excited. We had 6 teammates there. We had everyone a great, great job, and requalifying to get back into Boston. 4 of our 6 teammates requalified. We had a couple of PRs there. It was just a great, great day in really, really crappy weather conditions. So kudos to all of our teammates who ran the Boston Marathon. Kudos to all of our teammates who raced last week and did such a fantastic job. I'm always excited when that happens. What do you think, Sherry?
We had a good week. And everybody talked about the crappy weather. And I know it was rainy and windy, but I love running in the rain. I really do.
But it was cold.
I know.
And Boston cold is not like Arizona cold.
I know. I haven't been to the Northeast, so I can't really speak to it.
Yeah. Boston cold when it rains and it's windy. And the thing about this, the hardest part of the race was, obviously, it was cold. And for people who aren't used to the cold and they've been training under treadmill all winter long, getting ready for Boston, I always think April's such a terrible time to have that race anyway. But they weren't used to the cold, and when you turned into the city, when you're coming into the city of Boston, you get the headwinds. If there's headwinds that day, and all of a sudden they went from maybe 5, 6, 7 mile-an-hour winds to like 20 mile-an-hour winds for the last 8, 9 miles. It was pretty brutal. So it was a brutal day. The pro times were off.
Mm-hmm.
As well, but all in all, our people did really well. They hung in there, they raced well, they had great times. So I'm really, really proud of everyone, and congratulations to everyone who finished the Boston Marathon.
It sounded like everybody had a great time.
Yeah, that's important. As long as everyone has a good time, then we're happy. So tonight we have a very special guest. We would like to welcome to the show this evening, I'm going to call you Dr. Stephanie Fonda. Anyone tell us a little bit about Stephanie?
What did you say? Did you say my name?
Yeah, so you want to tell us a little bit about Stephanie?
You're like, tell us a little bit. Well, Stephanie has done research, I believe. Well, we should let Stephanie tell, but I'm very much looking forward to this conversation tonight, just because Stephanie is, I think, a wealth of knowledge. She's done a lot of research. She's currently working on nutritional ketosis research, and she's done research on diabetes, pre-diabetes, so she's just, like I said, a wealth of knowledge, so I'm excited to tap into that little brain of hers, actually that big brain of hers.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is Stephanie's on our team, so we get to hear about this all the time. And I think what's really important is, fat adaptation and ketosis are 2 very, very big topics that are out there now, especially in the endurance community as well. So I think it's really nice. And look, before any nutritionists that I know get all upset about what I'm going to say, nutritionists aside, Stephanie is a PhD and a research specialist who has an understanding of the research and how it works, probably as well as anyone. And I think, for me, I always love the medical proof of everything and how it works. And we'll talk about a little bit how I got involved with fat adaptive attitude and why I think it's the way to live and train. And then and some of the other things as we go on life. But Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for asking me to come. I'm happy to be here.
I think it's really, really cool. So let's go right to the beginning. Here we are, the three of us.
Okay. Okay.
And talking about a topic that has come to the surface in the last couple of years, more so in the athletic community. And I know I kind of, as we go through the show tonight, we'll hear how I got involved in it. But what led you into this field, and why are you here, and why are you talking about ketosis and ketogenesis and fat adaptation, and tell us what it's all about.
Well, that's a complicated question. I think I became interested in ketosis and nutritional ketosis, ketogenesis, fat adaptation, which we tend to use maybe a little too interchangeably, those phrases. But I came to it first because I'm an ultra runner, and the first ultra I did was a 50-miler. I did it untrained, and I did it because my friend was a good bargain, less than $1 a mile. So I thought, sure, I'll do that. And I fueled myself during that race by eating a mini Heath bar every time I felt miserable, which was quite often. I felt miserable often, and thought maybe I would quit. I didn't finish, but that wasn't the best experience, and I felt like I was thinking about, well, what do I know already based on what we're telling people with diabetes and the diabetes research I do, and that approach just didn't make sense, the approach I used during that race. And I've heard a lot at that time too that people would experience really severe GI distress during a race. Now, luckily, I haven't had that happen, but I saw it again and again. Even short races like 50-milers, people would have really what appeared to be a GI meltdown. And I began to think, well, this has to do, I think, with trying to process too many carbs, becoming carb intolerant during a race. And so that's what led me in the direction of nutritional ketosis, just being an ultra runner, doing it wrong, and trying to figure out if there's a way to do it better. Now, it's interesting, as someone in a diabetes clinic, and so my entire career I've worked in a hospital setting. Right now, I'm in the endocrinology clinic, and that's where we treat patients who have hard-to-treat diabetes. So medications aren't working, or for some reason their glucose keeps severe lows, or whatever. We treat difficult cases, and we do a lot of patient education. And when I came into the field, there was a lot of concern, and there still is now, with diabetic ketoacidosis. So that's a bad thing, right? You guys have heard this phrase? It's life-threatening. And when I mentioned nutritional ketosis on our Facebook group, somebody asked about that too. So the medical profession still has this in mind, that ketoacidosis is a bad thing, and it is. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the adaptation of the body to use ketones as fuel. Simple as that. So ketosis is when your blood levels of ketones is above a certain level. So most Americans with our high carb diet probably walk around with blood ketones in the range of 0 or 0.1 millimoles. And when we're talking about ketosis, we're talking about having a level of 0.5 or higher. When we're talking about diabetic ketoacidosis, and I don't want to dwell on this too long, we're talking about really high blood sugar simultaneously occurring or higher. So, this is a dangerous situation. The blood becomes acidic. Very different, though, and it happens in the absence of insulin, which is not the problem for most of us. So ketones are created in the liver by the breakdown of fatty acids. So the ketones that if you spend any time looking at this literature, the two ketones we hear about are beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetyl acetate. And so when people are testing their serum levels to see if they're in ketosis, that's what they're looking for. What's the level of those two components? So is that too much?
No.
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 Okay. Body's capable of using glucose, obviously, as an energy source, and that's a really have you guys read this book, Feed Zone Portables? Somebody in PRS Fit has referenced this book, I think, because they like the recipes at the end, and it's a very beautiful book. It's like food porn. It's really, really, really sexy book. They have, I think, a really excellent treatment. It's just a paragraph or two, in which they talk about, they have this metaphor, and they talk about how glucose is like the flame of the candle, and ketones are fat. That's the wax. So we need some glucose to kind of get the fire going, and we need to, fuel that fire a little bit, but if we can tap into the wax, we can burn for a really long time. And I just love great showing. They have this great table showing how much fat and how much glycogen, our energy source, we store in our muscles. Even a lean person with a lot of lean muscle mass only stores, 1,200 to 1,500 calories, and we store that in our liver, and we also store that in our muscles, and we need it in our muscles because the test right. Really interesting treatment. What?
So I keep losing your audio. You might want to keep your microphone up by your mouth.
Oh, is this all right?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So, what would you like to hear? Do you want to hear more about that?
One of the things, and you made a very interesting comparison, and we talked about this. I got in. I wasn't an easy sell on this, and the whole fact. Although it's really interesting because I've never been a big carb guy when it comes to performance. Even back in the '70s, and the '80s, when pasta dinners were the big thing before every race. That was never really my thing. Because I always felt heavy the next day, so I never really ate that much. And I come from the era of running where we didn't have anything. We had salt tablets and water. I mean, that was basically it, or Coca-Cola. I mean, I was running back before Gatorade, and then Gatorade came around, and that was kind of the thing. So we did that, and there was no such thing as goos or gels, and so we weren't poisoning our system with all these carbohydrates when we were going out to race or when we were training. It was pretty much water and salt. And, if the race was, like a really big to-do, they had Gatorade. If not, they had Coke on the tables. There's always Coke on the tables back in those days. But there were no little snacky things that you ate. And you never even thought about that. So I have never been one who's been able to do the whole carb loading. And one of the things I call it now is carb bloating process prior to a race. So Bob Seebehar, who in my opinion is probably, the leading sports nutritionist in the country, Bob's been involved with the metabolic efficiency training and fat adaptation for a few years now. He started talking about it, and I started paying attention to him, and then Jenny came along and started talking about it, and it took them quite a bit to sell me on the product. I mean, it was months of chasing me, and then weeks of me having people test it before I really bought into the whole product itself, which in the long run, as you know, I did in a big way. But it made sense. And here's one of the things that I have a hard time with, that it makes sense to me, but it doesn't make sense to me because the only way I've ever seen it done is in a lab, and that's when people talk about the crossover point. That place where you go from carb to fat burning, and how do you get there, and how do you stay there? And the person doesn't have an access to a lab to be tested. How do you come up with that number? Is there a way to come up with that number? Is there a way to determine what heart rate zone and what effort level a person, goes to the crossover point? Because I have actually trained, I'm very, very fortunate again, because when I lived in Colorado, Bob Seebehar was there and his lab was there, and I had a triathlete who was training for his first Ironman, and he went in and he did the whole test, and we could see at precisely which heart rate zone he went from carb to fat burning, what beat he went from carb to fat burning. And so we knew what level we had to train at and race at, and we could dial in the heart rate and then where he was burning more fat than carbohydrate and what power level he was at and what speed he was generating. I mean, it made training him so much fun, and so much fun for him to always look at the data. But 98% of the people that you train, you can't do that with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's some research. Oh, Sherry Ann, were you about to speak?
No, go ahead, please.
These folks that are, I think, they're most well known for doing the research on nutritional ketosis and sports performance, Bullock and Finney. They have new research coming out that is, it talks about the crossover hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
It's showing that fat-adapted, at least fat-adapted elite athletes are able to, like the crossover is extended out. It doesn't happen in the same place that the hypothesis is suggesting, like roughly, 65%? So their research is suggesting that fat-adapted elite athletes can actually have postpone that crossover to much higher levels of effort. And additionally, they're able to use more ketones than originally supposed per minute. So, that's, we have to wait and see what that research shows, but that's what I've heard.
Yeah, and there's just really no way of testing someone unless you actually test them. And for me, that
Yeah.
when I talk to someone, I can say, okay, here's a heart rate test, and I can dial in your heart rate zones and your effort level and your pace levels. And it's a little frustrating because I can't say, okay, well, here's where we're burning more fat than we are carbs, so this is where we want to stay at. So, we really have to, as coaches, in 98% of the people that we work with, we really have to, to go with, okay, we have to teach you how to burn fat, first of all. And I talk about that all the time. Sherry Ann and I talk about it all the time in that phase, in the aerobic phase of training, how important it is to the body, because we're developing mitochondria, at a much higher level than we are when we're in harder efforts. And we want to develop as many mitochondria as we possibly can. And we're also developing slow twitch fibers, and we're also developing the fat burning process. But along with that, now I read today, because I was reading the article that you put up, where a fat adapted diet in that part of training can actually help with the development of mitochondria as well.
Yes. Yes, and it's it can also help with so the metabolism of ketones is actually, I believe it's cleaner and better for you because it doesn't have the same byproducts of are so something you guys have probably heard of, which is oxidative. How we know that we should take our vitamin E and our vitamin C, and because they're antioxidants, right? Well, we're trying to reduce the effects of oxidative stress on our bodies. And the reason for that is because oxidative stress causes inflammation internally, and that leads to things like heart disease, to things like vision loss, at least in people with diabetes, nerve damage, etc. So the use of ketones as an energy source is actually, it's helping you create more mitochondria, and it's also having your mitochondria make energy for you in a way that is cleaner. So that's why I think we keep seeing all this diet, which, by the way, we should probably talk about soon. A ketogenic diet is helpful for brain health. It's neuroprotective, so it's supposed to be helpful for Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, seizure-resistant epilepsy. The Department of Defense is interested in the help with warfighter performance because they recognize that it increases cognitive functioning and physical performance in stressful situations, the use of ketones. And also, there's a gentleman by the name of Dominic D'Agostino. I think he's a biologist. He's been looking at the use of ketones for stopping seizures in CO2 time will above water will often experience seizures, and he's finding that ketones are very helpful for that. And then, Jeff and I have exchanged email about the fact that a ketogenic diet is also really helpful for tumor suppression and slowing the rate of cancer cells because it starves them. Cancer cells are really, really hungry little guys, and their mitochondria do not have the right enzymes for metabolizing ketones. So if all you're providing your body is, if you're training your body to use ketones only and not giving it carbohydrate, then eventually those cancer cells starve. So I think it's really excellent research. We've seen some people are also interested in it for bipolar disorder, anything having to do with the brain. I'm trying to think there's other things. Well, those are the main highlights.
So,
and then, of course, sports performance.
Anytime you want to jump in, because you know me, I'm going to go off.
Well, okay, so let me just help offer some clarification to, we'll ask Stephanie to offer some clarification to some of our listeners so that we can just kind of come back to home base a little bit. So ketosis is when your body has a certain level of ketones in it, correct?
Yes.
That's correct. Okay.
0.5 millimoles or higher. Yep.
So and your body can only produce ketones, correct? That's the only way you can have them in your blood is your liver breaks down fatty acids in order to make ketones, right?
Right.
So if somebody, in order to have your body learn, so do you have to teach your body to use ketones for an energy source, or will it just do it naturally? Or is it, if there's glucose readily available all the time, it's always going to go to glucose because that burns faster and easier, right?
Right.
Okay.
So it's a process. Okay.
So in order for your body to be able to use ketones, you have to eliminate the access to readily available glucose, right?
Right.
Okay. Just trying to help, because I understand it, but I think that some people kind of get it confused in the sense of they don't quite understand how the body makes ketones and how the body uses ketones, because it can be confusing for some people. And then some people also, I think, a lot of questions I get are, well, I can't have a totally non-carb diet, so how do are there certain carbs better than other carbs? And there's so many things so that's where I think the ketogenic diet comes into play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, in the 1920s, the ketogenic diet was developed, I think, as part of the, might have been the Hopkins protocol. It was for children with very severe epilepsy who were drug resistant, so they were not responding to 6 or more drugs, and they were having multiple seizures a day, still in effect, where children are fasted, so they have to be under the age of 17. That's part of it. They're brought into the hospital and they're fasted for several days. So fasting is important here for people. I can't do it, but when I talk to people who are following this lifestyle, a lot of them talk about intermittent fasting, and there is some they're nudging the body into this state, this ketogenic state. So they fast them, and then they send these children and their families home with a diet that is predominantly fat. All right, so we've got our 3 nutrients: fats, carbohydrates, and proteins, and these children eat diet, next protein, and then some carbohydrate. They eat it's a very strict diet. It's very hard for families to follow. With kids, they're going to school and they're exposed to birthday parties and so on. But that's the original diet. Now, it's been modified with time, but these folks, Volek and Finney, say that the key to getting into ketosis is to carbs to 50 grams, 20 to 50 grams per day. And that's difficult because vegetables have carbs, and a glass of milk, and there are hidden carbs all over the place. So it's pretty tough, I think. So I try to follow a diet that's close, but it really ends up being more low carb, high fat, but I wouldn't call it ketogenic.
You're not allowed to say the M word on this show, by the way.
The what word?
The M word, milk.
Milk? It's like M word.
Yeah, you can't say the M word on this show. So it's very interesting because so we all know that cancer cells feed on glucose, and okay, so you brought that up, so that's where I'm going. We know that cancer cells feed on glucose, and you think, and so to starve, you're talking about starving the body of carbohydrate. That girl in the article today made that crazy statement, your brain needs carbohydrate to function, right? And I know you disagree with that, and I think I disagree with that as well. And so here we are, and I'll talk about it from my perspective, and then Shireen can talk about it from her perspective, and then maybe between those two perspectives, some of our athletes will understand what's going on. So if I were to reduce my carb intake as drastically as I possibly could, and trying to train for an Ironman, where you do it and you're training for 100, where in that point am I going to start to feel really crappy?
I've heard people say they feel really crappy during the adaptation phase. So the first, maybe 2 months, 2 to 8 weeks, and I interviewed another team member. I won't say who because I don't know how he feels about it, but he talked about getting some relief during that period of time, that adaptation period, by drinking bouillon, and I'd heard that before. There's this Dr. Peter Attia. He's an Ironman triathlete. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's also a big fan of GenUcan. He's also talked about drinking bouillon. It's so high in sodium, and that makes people more comfortable during this phase. And then sort of, training at that level, that metabolic efficiency level that the article today that I sent today was mentioning. That's helpful too for the adaptation, making it more comfortable. But, at some point, I think, especially for an Ironman, in which it's just such a different sport. Crush the 20-year-old that is riding next to you or running next to you, and you're going to pour on some speed, right? And that's going to require glycogen. So, one thing that I've been wondering about, is hoping you could answer, is how do you balance these things of needing using the glycogen when you really need it, but being fat adapted?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, because that came up at Sherry Ann's 100-miler recently. I was at, and it's happened to other athletes who I've trained. Now we'll leave Dane out of the mix, because he's like the most fat adapted person that you'll ever meet. I mean, he did his whole 100-miler, Genucan and coconut butter, pretty much. I mean, that was it. And he did really, really well. And probably because he lives the lifestyle about as diligently as anyone I know. I found it with Sherry Ann's race, and I found it other races, especially, maybe not so much Ironman, because I was able to do all of Ironman Lake Placid on Genucan alone, and hydrator and water. I think I did 88 calories an hour. But I can tolerate the consistency and the taste of the Genucan, and a lot of people have a difficult time doing that. But I think there comes a point, and there comes a point where, and I've seen it mostly at 100-milers so far with teammates, and at the faster races where, we do need some glucose in there for some energy. We do, or some kind of food. We need some kind of food. It seemed like with Sherry Ann, we needed some kind of food that was going to not make her sick. Mm-hmm. 2, not be Genucan, because she was really tired of the taste of the Genucan, and 3, keep her moving as well. Mm-hmm. In Sherry Ann's case, we came up with raisins and peanut butter. It's like I sat there going through a bag of trail mix, pulling out all the raisins, and gave her the raisins when she came into the aid station, because it was about the only thing she could keep down at that point. And not because she was sick, but because that's all she really wanted to tolerate, but she needed some kind of food. And so my struggle is, and I've been trying to get a hold of Barn and talk to Barn at Genucan, what's going to be the ideal food substance that's going to have some glucose in it when your body is saying, hey, I need that sugar burst to get going. I need to have that carb burst, and I always refer to carbs as sugars, because that's what they are. I really need to get that. I really need to get that going so I can go, and without completely shutting down, the fat burning process. So, does that mean it has to be some very low glycemic carbohydrate that we can find that can do that? I don't know. Fruit seems to work for some people, and I just think it's. As a coach, I have to say, okay, look. On your long runs, we need to practice this somehow. On that long 6-hour bike ride day, we need to practice this. We need to have some. If we're using Genucan, we need to use the Genucan, and then we need to find out something else that you can put in that you can tolerate, that you're going to need. Because not everyone is me, and not everyone is Dane. And I found that out with Sherry Ann a second time around. Guys at the 100. Now I'm finding it out more at hundreds than I am in Ironman. Mm-hmm. At shorter, faster races, when you're in that glycogen burning mode a lot longer, I'm just convinced that, we have to, there has to be something there. And whether it's, a low sugar, like a hammer gel, or, a gel that is as low in sugar as possible to use, I think they have to have it. I mean, I have a lot of guys who are using EFS, which is like, 3,000 grams of sugar a serving, but, they're getting what they need at that point that they need it when they get, when they're anaerobic or just below anaerobic, when their body's screaming for the glucose and the glycogen to go on.
And I think it's, having them try it during training and whatnot so they have it down for race day is great. but it's not just during training. Like, this is a lifestyle that people have to adapt to. It's not just for the few hours that you're training and race day. It's because you have to do it across the board. And I think that's, for me as a coach, is what I find challenging with people, is to help them adjust their everyday lifestyle diet.
Yeah, well, and Stephanie, you can jump in here at any time and tell me to shut up. And you're allowed to do that on this show. But here's what I find. Athletes who are performing at a very high level for very long periods of time. If you look at elite triathletes, if you look at the elite 100 guys, they're gooing themselves to death the entire time they're out there. I've talked to Rinny, and she said, she 7 or 8 goos on the bike. She actually eats so much she throws them up, and then she gets on the run and she just drinks water and sodium. But they're performing at that level where they probably need that. And you hear them talk about it on Ironman all the time, 400 calories an hour. These professionals are taking in 400 calories an hour. And I cringe. I think, ooh. But, again, you have to look at, what their energy level is and what they're burning for energy throughout that entire period of time. And, so as a coach, you have to say, okay, well, let's live this fantastic lifestyle because, one, it's healthier. And I've seen the results firsthand of that, not with me, but and I'll use Dane, and Dane never minds me talking about him. But this is a guy who went completely fat adaptive about 2 years ago now, and after his first year, his cholesterol levels went down 10 points. And his performances went up, his cholesterol went down, so I know it's a much healthier lifestyle, and it's providing much health. But at that performance end, it's like saying, okay, well, we want you to eat like this all the time, and then on your long aerobic stuff, do this. But when you do this intensity stuff, and there's going to be intensity workouts, we got to do something else. And because I think that's, and I could be wrong, and there's probably nutritionists out there who are going to listen to this and scream at me and call me a moron or whatever, but I don't care. I really think that if I'm sending someone out on an interval workout, hill repeats or something like that, where they're in that anaerobic area, they need to be fueling that on that workout. So when they get there on race day, they need to be prepared. Their body is used to fueling it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But do you find that help? If you have an athlete that comes to you asking about nutrition, and you talk to them about fat adaptive, and having them try to adopt that in their everyday life, do you find that to be a challenge?
For me?
With other people accepting that, because our society has always been fat's bad,
The dirty word is fat.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's not so difficult with men, and it's really interesting because here's the difference. And again, I'm probably going to get in trouble. But when I talk to men about nutrition and about fueling, when I say, look, yeah, Jenny can taste horrible, but it's not a steak dinner. That's not what you're there. That's not what you're using it for. You're using it as a performance product. And if we change our lifestyle to include more fat, this product will make you better. Automatically, they go, oh, okay. When I say to a new female client, okay, I want you to live a fat adaptive lifestyle, it's like, nope, I'm not waiting for the fat word, and because your gender has been so predisposed to the fact that that's a bad word, and it's, maybe we should have another word. Maybe we're going to teach you to be lipid adapted. I don't know. It just doesn't flow, right?
To have a modified ketogenic diet.
Yeah, it doesn't flow right. But yeah, sure. There's always a lot of resistance going against the norm.
Yeah.
And we're at a point now, and we're at a very serious point over the last couple of years, where more and more people are talking about this, and we're seeing better and better results. Not just performance-wise, but we're seeing better and better results lifestyle-wise, that it's easier to talk about to people because they go, well, I've heard about that, but I don't know. And that's better than, oh, what are you talking about fat, than it used to be. So I think we're getting at that point now where people are hearing it's like heart rate training. So many runners for so many years, you're talking about heart rate training, and it's like, well, I don't know what that means. I got to run 80 miles this week. They didn't understand. But now I'm seeing more and more runners are talking about aerobic-based training and heart rate training. So, I think we're at a critical stage where we really have to dial it in, and as far as, and I'll speak for our business, and as far as our business goes, we have to dial in and say, okay, this is what we believe works. I mean, I did that with Genucan. When I got sold on Genucan, it was like, okay, this stuff works. Okay, and it works better than anything I've ever seen on the market work. Mm-hmm. If you do this, this, and this. And thusly, our athletes have performed very, very well on it, and they believe in it, and they use the product. But I think it's something that we have to be convicted in when we're talking to athletes.
So,
Stephanie, as convicted as we are in heart rate training.
Stephanie, do you think that it's possible for a ultra runner, 50, someone that's training for a 50 or 100, or an Ironman athlete to train effectively on a ketogenic diet?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, it takes time to adapt. Of course, those first few weeks of running, when I've tried it, without carbs on board, difficult, and I slowed down, which, as you know, is going to change the mix that your body uses for energy. You're going to burn more fat than carbs proportionally, and that helped. So the combination of slowing down and the other thing is, it's not just removing carbs. You have to be careful with protein too. I mean, you can eat protein. You need to eat protein, but from what I've heard and read, that ketosis, and meaning it will lower the level of ketones in your blood. So, it's definitely a fat-focused. Keeping that in mind, helpful.
So you cut out there for a second, at least for me. I don't know about for everybody else, but so you said certain proteins impact the level of ketones in your body?
It's really too much protein. I don't know if, too much. So, eating
so really
2 steaks.
Fat focus then.
So as research, what's too much?
It's a good question.
Because we're different. For some people, for example, they might be knocked out of ketosis eating just 10 grams of carbs a day, whereas someone else might be able to eat 100. So, the same with protein. It's got to be through experimentation, and people will spend the money to buy ketone strips that they put into their glucose meter. And that's a finger stick, and then you can see where you are. I think that's useful, but that sort of experimentation has. I did talk to some people, one person in particular, as part of my interviews, and he's not the only person who has said this to me. He knows when he's in ketosis based on a taste he gets in his mouth. He has a metallic taste in his mouth, and also he can like the capillaries are more expanded in those fatty areas in his body, so he can feel the fat being used. So I thought that was fascinating. Are tuned in like that, but I think if someone's really interested, I'd like to feel some fat burning.
I was like, I'd like to feel it getting sucked out.
Yeah, I want to smoke some of what he's smoking.
That sounds pretty good.
I don't care what I feel. I just want to smoke some of what he's smoking. So again, we're back.
I want to take the fat and.
Go ahead. Yeah, you just broke up. Say that again.
I was making a joke.
Okay. So again, we're back to, and we say this all the time. Everything about everything we do is you're an individual, and if you want to find out where everything works best for you, it becomes a trial and error phase. So for me, I have to go upstairs and say, okay, well, what, I'm going to start out eating 10 carbs a day, and I'm going to start eating this much protein, and I'm going to start eating this much fat, and see how I feel for a week or two. And if I'm not feeling right, then I say, okay, well, then I have to try this. And you know, that's a process. But I think it's incumbent upon us as professionals, just like Sherry Ann and I both believe in the aerobic conditioning process, to get people to do it. You know, that's the thing. We have to say, okay, we believe this works, and these are the examples that we've seen working. So it's important for you to try it and to experiment it, and especially in the early phases of your training, where you're really going to see a lot of benefits of it, and you're not working so hard that it's going to shut your system down.
Mm-hmm.
Yay, nay, Stephanie?
Well, I immediately thought of the patients in our clinic, people with diabetes, and you know, they benefit from a low-carb diet.
Well, I don't know why you're. Can you say that again, please? You said they benefited from a low-carb diet.
Yeah, because they're either insulin resistant, probably, or they're hyperglycemic. You know, that's what defines diabetes, basically, too much sugar in the blood. And here they have this, a chronic disease that can have, it was life-threatening, and it carries with it horrible complications, not managed well. And we can't even get them to make the dietary change, you know. So, you know, I can't, I mean, a few do, of course, but I can't imagine what you're up against.
Hey, look, it's not easy for anyone to make the dietary changes, you know, and I know better than anyone some of the things that I should be doing that I don't do, and I probably should do, and I feel the effects of it when I don't do it. But it's it's not. It's funny. I hate to talk about this stuff. But anyway, it's funny when you're in a position where, and you said the word life-threatening, and when you're in a position where that could be the case, how little some other things really matter to you. Mm-hmm. And so you say to yourself, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, and then sometimes you say to yourself, well, why? And then you just do what you want to do anyway. And that's, I don't know if that's human nature or if that's facing the reality of things. I don't know what's first. I don't know. I'm probably in a position where I should know that, but I don't know, because sometimes you just want to. Sometimes you just want to shut it off and be normal. I think one of the things that Patty hears me say quite a bit is that I'm tired of being sick. Mm-hmm. I'm tired of the 25 pills a day, I think it is. And so it's sometimes you just want to be normal. And so I think that's one of the reasons why diabetics and people in that situation probably don't do what they're supposed to do all the time, because you just get tired of not being normal anymore. And we should mention that probably 1 in 4 Americans now are diabetic, right? I mean, the number's pretty high.
Oh yeah, it's approaching like 20%. It's not there now, but you just look at over half of Americans are overweight or obese.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is associated with type 2 diabetes, and we're headed to, it's an epidemic. It's not 20%, it's like 7-8%, but that's a lot of people that we're talking about, and that's a huge toll on our healthcare resources.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
yeah,
we're not here to talk about diabetes.
Change is hard for people. It always is, and I think that people have to be motivated to make that change actually happen. And when it comes to doing a new, and I hate the word diet, like it's just I'd rather it be like ketogenic meal plan or something. But I think change always makes people uncomfortable, and they have to be motivated to make that change. And some people are, and some people aren't, but as a coach, when I'm training people and I try to talk to them about their nutrition, and because the whole fat adaptive diet and being in ketosis and all the ketogenesis and all of that, that's, to me, that's still fairly new, like in the last, couple of years, and I feel like I'm still learning so much about it. And so that in itself presents its own challenges, because I'd rather be eloquent and able to talk about it with people. And that's why I'm so excited to have you on the team and be able to have you as a resource to go to, because I think it is hugely beneficial for people just on an everyday fashion, not even talking about being an athlete that's training for a race, just everyday lifestyle. It'd be so beneficial for people to understand what having a fat adaptive lifestyle would be for them.
Yeah, and it's funny. My question to people, because everyone always talks about nutrition, and nutrition comes up with every athlete all the time. At least probably once a week, twice a week. I hear, what should I do nutritionally? And like you said, you make the suggestions and they don't always follow it. And I think for me, the question gets to be, well, how motivated are you to achieve your goal?
Mm-hmm.
And because this is a big part of it, and there's absolutely no way around it. If your nutrition isn't dialed in, all throughout your training plan, you don't recover properly to train better the next day. You don't race properly. I mean, it starts on day one of training that you have to start making this commitment to a different kind of lifestyle. And my question is, how motivated are you? Are you motivated enough to reach your goal that you're going to make these changes? And I think most people will. And because my whole thing is, you didn't hire me to coach you. So, bottom line is, don't ask me a question, don't have me give you an answer, and then ignore me. Or call me up and say, well, Coach, I think you should be telling me to do this. I actually have people who say that sometimes. I think you should tell me to do this. And I go, no, wrong guy. And, end of relationship. But I think that's, we have a bigger responsibility, I think, than just giving people a schedule and training them. And that's the way we handle our business. I don't know if everyone does that, and that's not my business to say. But the way we handle our business is we have a huge responsibility to every health aspect that we deal with our athletes. And I think we have a huge responsibility. It's why we do this show. It's why we give away so much information on the internet, because I feel like I have a responsibility to talk about health and fitness. I just feel like I have that responsibility, and I don't have to be paid for it all the time. And so that's why we do what we do. I know, Stephanie, you said to me the other day in an email, I don't think you charge enough for everything that you do. And I said, yeah, I do that, but that's neither here nor there. I do what I do because I think it's important that someone's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And Sherry Ann feels that way too, and that's why she quickly became such an important part of this company and is going to be the company. So and I just think we have a responsibility.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I love learning and I love teaching people, and that's part of being a coach. And the nutrition side of everything it feels like it's not always changing, but there's always something to learn, it feels like.
So
we did. I know we've got to wrap up, but I just want to tell you quickly. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple years ago, we recruited people with type 2 diabetes who were not taking mealtime insulin to participate in a randomized controlled trial. We recruited 100 people, and 50 of them got regular care, and the other 50 got to use for 8 weeks on and off a continuous, this is neat, a continuous glucose monitor. So the way people at home take care of their diabetes now is by finger stick, and they can see what their blood sugar is right then and there. But these patients wore a sensor that's inserted subcutaneously, wore it 24 hours a day for a week on, and then they changed the sensor. And they had a little cell phone-like gizmo where they could see what their blood sugar was. this little device would sample the glucose, the interstitial fluid, and get a glucose reading every 1 to 5 minutes,
Wow.
which is amazing.
Yeah.
So they could see at any given point their trend. And all we did was we said, here, take this, good luck. That's it. We didn't do anything else. And they went home, they used it, and what did they learn? They learned that an apple makes their blood sugar go up a lot higher than a pear. They learn that if they don't get enough sleep, their blood sugar is out of whack the next day. They learn that a slow walk around the building of so I'm telling you this, it had an amazing clinical benefit for these patients. And I'm telling but because I'm telling you this because I think what worked for people was the immediate feedback. It's like behavioral economics. So if you guys can figure out a way to help people sort of get that feedback soon, you know, that's very motivating. Like just like people who they go on Atkins and they lose 30 pounds in 2 weeks, you know, that's immediate feedback. It's very motivating. So just think about it. That's why I told you the story. I think that feedback and seeing cause and effect was very helpful.
Oh yeah, I would agree. We're such a instant gratification society, and I think having quick information and quick results makes a huge difference. I mean, because it eliminates that wait period of wondering and guessing and am I doing it, you know, it's so that's pretty cool.
Anything you want to add, Stephanie?
Well, I hope we get a chance to talk about this again because there's more stuff coming out, and I'm interview people is difficult. So, you know, I guess I'd like to add that. I hope we get a chance to discuss it again at some time.
Anytime you like. We love having you on the show. We love having people come on, and we especially like talking about nutrition on the show because people love to hear about it. Mm-hmm. Whether they pay attention or not, people still love to hear about it. Mm-hmm. So, anything else to say?
No.
Nothing from you? As always, the website's prsfit.com. You can reach us at coach@prsfit.com. My number is 720-400-2131. Call me if you don't like me. I don't care. I'll probably just hang up on you. But you can call, ask me any questions that you want. That's the way it goes. Send us an email. Seriously, send us an email if you have any questions about the show. You want to know anything more. We'll get you any kind of information that we can. So please send us an email, coach@prsfit.com, and Sherry Ann and I will get back to you.
Yep.
As always,
be healthy.
Be smart.
And have fun.
And we'll see you next week. Hang around, Stephanie.